Let's take a look at some information and charts on Decred for brave new coin. So much like Dash, Decred is hybrid proof of work, proof of stake, governance, treasury, proposals, lots of stuff, lots of moving parts, bells and whistles. Now I refer to it in my heart of hearts as a code-based fork of BTC. The fervent Decred community will deny that. Now they will say it was rewritten entirely. You have your first draft, that was BTC. Your second draft is Decred. Whatever. I mean, it doesn't matter to me. Call it what you want. I don't care. Decred doesn't exist without BTC. This isn't a bad thing. People just assume it's a bad thing. Decred needs to have its own identity. Blah, blah, blah. I just, it doesn't matter to me. It's not a big deal. Decred also has LN, Lightning Network. I don't have a lot of stats on that. The Decred info website may have some stats on that. My general feelings are on LN in general is Lightning Network. Too early, needs lots of time. I know Desiree at Lightning, I love Lightning, but right now it needs a lot more development to be more than just a hobbyist's transaction network. It's a little too difficult to use, I think, for most people still. So if we look under the hood, the stats part, my favorite part, DCRstats.com, honestly, if every website or if every coin had a website like this, it would make my life extremely easy because otherwise I have to go searching for all this information. But you can see the network supply, how it's broken down. They did have a pre-mine. I like that they call it a pre-mine. They don't call it anything else. Dev subsidy. Proof of stake mine, proof of work mine, airdrop. So they had some stuff early on. I think it's like 25%-ish of everything. And just like BTC, they have 21 million total circulating. Eventually 62% mined so far. You can see the proof of work reward is most of the reward. Some of it's proof of stake, and then the dev subsidy. Average block time is half of BTC, around 5 minutes. If we look at the mining side of things, Blake 256 is the algorithm. No new ASICs since 2019, very similar to Dash. Eventually, all these aren't going to disappear, right? They have a shelf life. It's hardware. It doesn't last forever. I don't know if it's 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, but generally they are ridden pretty hard in that they just, you turn them on max until they're dead, basically. That's what I would do. So I don't know what the life expectancy of these are, but over the next few years, you're probably going to see a lot of this cease to exist. And unless there are new ASICs down the pipe, things will shift to completely GPUs. GPU manufacturing is going to continue to exist regardless of crypto for a variety of reasons unrelated to crypto. So that'll always be there as an option. I don't know with this algorithm if CPUs are more advantageous than GPUs. Sometimes there's RAM considerations, all sorts of stuff going on in the background there. But at 4 cents per kilowatt hour, some of these are barely profitable, and some of them are definitely outliers in profitability in a good way. And if we look at the hash rate has declined. I don't know if this is a China effect or price effect or both, but hash rates have declined from their range pretty considerably. And if this was just a proof of work network, it would be a bigger deal, but it's half and half, or, whatever percentage of each. So it's not as big of a deal if hash rate drops off like this, and difficulty as well dropping off as adjustments occur from time to time. If we look at the mining distribution though, it's over 50% solo miners, which is maybe the most distributed hash rate on any network that exists currently. Very impressive. I don't know what the exact breakdown for BTC is, but a lot of the China stuff, I should check the Wayback Time Machine to see what this looked like in January, February this year, because my guess is stuff like Ant Pool had a bigger percentage than it does now. At any rate, that's extremely healthy to see from a decentralization perspective. If we switch gears to staking, Decred has 55% participating in staking. Generally, it's anywhere between 50 and 80% of a proof of stake network is being staked at any given time. And it's all sorts of, or at least all sorts of interesting questions on something like ETH that is eventually going to proof of stake. What percentage is going to be staked versus unstaked? What happens when this hits some crazy tipping point versus activity? Unlike most other proof of stake coins, with ETH, you can do a lot with your Ethereum. For most proof of stake coins, kind of including Decred, there isn't much else to do with it other than sort of buy and hold or participate in staking. You know, there isn't a massive like DeFi vibrant community. There aren't NFTs or ICOs or things you can do with it beyond a medium of exchange. It doesn't really have utility necessarily. Now you can do a lot of stuff with anything, right? But with stuff like Decred and Dash, you know, there isn't that much else to do with it other than stake. The staking rewards are better. The adjusted reward after inflation, certainly better than most proof of stake networks. Slightly worse than staking USDC in DeFi though, right now, right? That may change. It's highly variable. But again, unless the incentives are there to buy and hold Decred, a volatile asset, versus buying and holding USDC, non-volatile asset, well, for the most part, or any other stablecoin and participating in DeFi, if you're looking for a yield, you're probably going to go there with your multiple millions than Decred. Maybe I'm wrong, right? I don't know. But that's just my guess based on incentives. There's a small lockup here for the ticket system, but in any case, the reward is still pretty decent. As far as inflation's concerned or issuance per year, DCR in the yellow there, kind of hard to see, but it's at 5.7%, slightly above Dash, definitely above ETH, LTC, definitely above BTC and Monero, below Zcash and Grin. So it certainly sits within the realm of where everything else is at this point in time, as far as non-BTC, non-Monero stuff, altcoins basically. Now, if EIP 1559 is highly successful, if proof of stake is highly successful, if issuance for ETH drops down to sub 2% versus DCR, whatever it may be at that point in time, 3 to 4%, again, that's another knock against buying and holding something like Decred over stuff with low inflation, you know. Just at a bare minimum, at baseline, now Monero has infinite supply with a continued block subsidy, whereas BTC does not. But, you know, these are the differences here. And people are going to be paying more and more attention to this over time as some of this stuff gets older and older and older and isn't going anywhere, obviously. So another thing to consider, that Decred doesn't exist in a vacuum. No chain does. I don't know why nodes on Decred have been dropping off from what I can remember. I don't know if this DCR stats has an updated version of this or not. Sometimes I check Blockchair as well for node data. They're usually pretty up on that sort of thing, although it doesn't look like they have node data for Decred. But another aspect to any good network is they have a vibrant, geographically decentralized node network that isn't based on cloud storage like Ethereum kind of is with Infura, Amazon Web Services, Google Cloud, Microsoft Cloud, that sort of thing. Ticket prices also down considerably. This is the checkonchain.com site. I don't know if this is an anomaly or the data is just acting weird. Certainly less bullish to see ticket prices fall off like that if this data is real. Again, the supply stake just continues to increase over time, which is bullish for any proof of stake coin. Just less supply in circulation. If there's less for sale, if there's more that's being bought and hold, that's bullish for price on balance. Transaction counts holding pretty steadily at these levels since the DCR DEX was enabled. So it's easy to say, look at these transaction counts. They're incredibly bullish, unless you realize the network's fundamentally different in that it has this new thing that creates transactions in a way that it does. And you can kind of see the waxing and waning of average transaction values along with price. But anytime you see a big jump in transactions, you typically see transaction sizes begin to decline, simply because you're seeing more transactions at a smaller size. If we look at the stake shuffle component, the mixing component, the privacy component, not exactly Monero, not exactly Zcash, very similar, or in my mind, similar enough to Dash, where it has this functionality, but if your life depended on it, you're probably not going to use this over Monero. I mean, that's just how it works. It's great that these chains have this functionality, but ultimately it can be traced and tracked. But it does have some privacy functionality, we'll put it like that. These have been increasing slowly over time, so it looks like more and more people are using them, but again, it's still early by the looks of it. Here's that DEX. I wish I had more data on this. The check on chain site. The volume page wasn't working for me. I don't know if that's just temporary, just down at the moment, but that's one thing I'd really like to see is volume per day, and then compare this to all the other stuff, right? Compare it to all the other ETH dexes, compare it to waves, compare it to anything else that's going on in the DEX environment department. I would love a giant graph on monthly volumes for each chain's dexes, and then like volumes relative to market cap. I don't know, you could go crazy with it, but that's the type of stuff I want to see if I'm trying to analyze the impact of a DEX on a chain. Active addresses, though, continue to increase, continue to hit all-time highs. Whenever I see that, it's hard not to be bullish. This is definitely very much a DEX effect, most likely, amongst other things. If you look at NVT and RVT in the graph at the bottom here, historically, when NVT reaches these levels, inverse metric of economic utility, lower the better. So when NVT is down here, it's telling you it's in a buy zone. I'm not a giant fan of NVT, but it does help some people, so I like to talk about it. And it's pretty simple. It's black and white, or green and red. Buy zone down here, sell zone up here. This suggests there will be an additional run, or this is a great buy for Decred, even at these levels, despite where it was at the beginning of the year. Much like BNB, much like most altcoins, it's up pretty considerably since January. So I'm always hesitant to jump into any of these in a big way. Puel multiple, another one, a mining metric. Buy zone's a little further down, but doesn't look terrible from sort of a buy-sell component. Again, it's pretty black and white as far as the moving averages are concerned and how this sits on the Puel multiple. So not quite in the buy zone there just yet. If we look at MVRV, another simple market cap to utility metric, historically for any coin, anything 2 or above on the fill here, the MVRV has represented overbought conditions. For Decred, it continued to push higher in 2017 and 2018, despite a declining MVRV. And most recently, it kind of did the same. It went to 1.88, dropped, and prices continued to go higher. So not a perfect metric for Decred, but something I would look to if we do get another run on altcoins and MVRV is creeping up to 1.8 to 2 to 2.2, whatever it is. That typically represents overbought, more speculative type activity than organic utility, economic activity, that sort of thing. This is their proposal governance mechanism, Polyatia. I don't really dig too deep into any of these. Some of this is marketing, some of this is dev work. I like that this exists. I like that people can influence block reward money, basically, kind of independently. I don't mind a budget for this sort of thing on any chain. Otherwise, it's developers asking, marketers asking for donations. The big thing about BTC is it doesn't really need marketing. It could use lobbyists, but we kind of have lobbyists in different ways and forms already. But I think generally this sort of thing is good for chains. And we can look at the treasury inflow-outflow balance, and this is denominated in DCR. And they still have a ton of DCR in their treasury. So this is unlikely to collapse anytime soon, right? That's really something else you're always looking for. Something like LTC that was asking for donations. Even Monero has a yearly budget, right? So all of these coins need to pay the developers when they're innovating, in some way, shape, or form. Decred on Google Trends has been kind of sad, even in January, February, March. Just not a lot of activity here. I know Kathy Wood was mentioning it. She was talking about adding it to some crypto fund, I think, or some ETF. I don't know. So it's definitely in the conversation. A lot of Bitcoin maxis love Decred as well. So it's not like it's forgotten about, but there's just not a lot of search interest or activity around Decred generally, especially since the past couple of years. Moving on to technicals, this is the 1-year MA, the 365 MA, and the MA multiplier. So it's giving you a buy zone, sell zone. It's telling you when to DCA in and when to DCA out. This doesn't mean it can't go higher or lower, but above or below these bands, it's just giving you a good idea of, as an oscillator, overbought, oversold conditions. So it did tap this overbought area earlier in the year, giving you a pretty good warning sign. If you weren't sure based on the $10 to $200 move, that this was a bit overbought and nearing its natural end before a pullback. This is a way to quantify that. A lot of people get lost in the sauce and the euphoria, and this is one thing you can add, even though backtesting isn't great, right? Like has an N of 2 maybe. The buy zone has been multi-year, so that hasn't really told you a whole heck of a lot. But it's a way to just use math in some way, shape, or form to figure out what's going on. So based on the 1 year, I like sub 90 as a buy. I like sub 450 or above 450 as a sell. So let's say this is the bottom. I wouldn't want to sell this until it's above 450, and this will change over time, increase or decrease. It's a moving average, so keep that in mind. Because it's 450 today doesn't mean it's not going to be 570 by the time it gets there. It's just in a bit of an awkward spot between the midpoint and the buy zone. On the 2-year MA, the 730, again, not a lot of backtesting historically on this, but it did reach its sell zone, kind of screaming for a couple of months that, hey, this is overbought. Hey, this is overbought. Hey, by the way, this is overbought, right? Like just telling you over and over and over again. Back to the midline now, and this is telling you 55 is your buy zone. So not super helpful, because ultimately if you're waiting on 89, sub 100 for Decred, this may be like a 6 to 12 month retracement process. Probably not going to happen overnight. Looking at the 5200 cross, VPVR, yearly pivots, and RSI on Poloniex, tons of support, sub 44. I mean, historically, Decred's never really lived up here. It's really been sub 50. 10 to 50 is really kind of where it's lived for most of its life, then took off in a big way. Late 2020, you had that golden cross at the bottom, which again, historically, much like Dash, these don't always give you 10,000 million %, right? But that's not the point. The point is you treat every single cross as if you could get a decent run out of it. Eventually it does. When it does, it pays for the ones that don't. Like here, you get stopped out fairly early if you're just trading golden cross to death cross. Here, if you're trading golden cross to death cross, you're still in. You're just holding. It hasn't crossed yet, right? But it looks like it's going to, should this curl down over the next few weeks. On the 12-hour cloud, it did have a bit of a breakout. It does have this extreme triple bottom. Is this a inverted head and shoulders? I don't know. It doesn't look like there's a massive case against a inverted head and shoulders here. It looks fine. It definitely needs to get back above 150 to confirm that bottom reversal breakout. And on the daily cloud, it's basically hit that flat Kumo target already. So when this happens once, I don't assume it's going to keep happening, even though, eventually this may just go flat or curl up to 150. For me, that trade is over now until it's back above the cloud. So you're either trading this as a vanilla Kumo breakout like late 2020, or you're watching this on some low time frame, waiting for some signal. But ultimately, it needs to get back above 150 on the pattern side of things and above 170 on the daily cloud. Then on ETH-BTC, it historically hasn't held value against BTC. It's had decent runs. It's had an M double top up here. It's had a multi-year mega bear trend. And in early 2021, it had that golden cross for the first time since 2018. And those are the type of crosses that are typically have the best performance when you are coming out of a multi-year trend. So that isn't surprising to see some reversal there off that cross. But now it's looking more like head and shoulders, diamond top, all sorts of non-bullish continuation type of things. An alternative to this would be the square chart. Let me just pull that up. But Square stock, Square, the company, had a very similar type of diamond top, head and shoulders looking chart up here that bounced off the 200 and is basically back at all-time highs, back at local highs. So I'm not saying it can't happen. It just doesn't seem super probable that this keeps going in the near term. Yearly R5 is at 006, support on the downside, kind of at 0017, 0025. Those are the levels I'd be watching, but probably the forecast is just more sideways in the near term. Last, I'll just mention the ETH-BTC fund and DeFi portfolio. I trade for Techemy Capital on Enzyme.finance, non-custodial portfolio management tool where you can see AUM allocation performance in all my trades. This is on Zerion. Sometimes the Enzyme site isn't loading for me or is having issues. You can always load it up on Zerion to see what's going on. So that's all I have for this one. Like, dislike, comment, share, subscribe, and happy trading.